Okay. Hello. Good evening. If that's the part of the world you're in, welcome to Sunday evening here in California. It is 7 o'clock. So I am here, and you are here, and we are here, and we are all together. Anyway, good to see you. Pleasure, as always. I am going to be reading for the next hour, most of the next hour anyway. As I talked about at some babbling length last night, things have been very, very, very busy and very crazy around our house. Nothing alarming in the sense of, nobody's sick or hurt or getting divorced or, you know, but it has been crazy. I will fill you in on some of the details. It's not book business related or anything like that. It's just, well, as I said, I will fill you in at some later point, just as I update people on our life news. But as I said, it's not anything to worry about. But it has been a crazy last several weeks. Longer than that, but then again, it's been a crazy decade. It's been a crazy half a century and more. Anyway, so there's not really a huge amount to tell. We are finally, after a long winter siege, we are enjoying decent weather here, and we can actually let the dogs out and not have to towel them off and scrub the mud off them every time they come back in. So that's a good thing. And beyond that, I don't really know, because all I've been doing for the last several weeks is working on one thing or another. The last few days, I haven't even been able to work on the book stuff, so I don't have any news about that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that is worth talking about. And to be honest with you, I can't think of anything. My life has been very boring and busy and boring. But anyway, so let me say hello to the folks who have showed up already. And I'll probably get an early start on reading like I did last night. So first off, I see Carl at the top. And hello, Carl. Good to see you. Kristen. Hello, Jennifer. Welcome. Becca. Hello, hello. Isaac. Hello, Isaac. Who else is here? Penny. Hello, Penny. And Emily. And Keith, calling in from Canada, from north of the border. Well, north of our border. Obviously, it's not north of Canada's border. Well, it's north of Canada's southern border. See, I shouldn't even talk because I'm just talking nonsense. Claudia, hello, hello. Good to see you. Medardo, bienvenido, señor. Susan, hello. Yes, yes, yes. And Lily is here. Lily is here. She's behind me. You can see her. She's completely excited for the evening's broadcast, as she always is. She's just riveted her attention. Yeah, I know. She looks like a meatloaf. Anyway, who else is here that I haven't said hello to yet? Angie. Hello, Angie. Hello, Barb. Ann. Good to see you. And Ray. Greetings, greetings. So that's who is here so far. And I will, if I get a chance, I will update later on. I'm probably just going to jump into the reading as mentioned, just because of the fact that, as I said, I don't have a whole lot of interesting information to share. It hasn't been that kind of a week where there's like a lot of things that I can tell you about. I don't think. No, I don't think. It's just been mostly domestic stuff that has to be taken care of. And there's been a lot of it. A lot. Among other things, I mentioned that we had to clear out the garage, and that was a horrendous, horrifying job, although it had redeeming moments in the sense that we found a lot of stuff that we probably hadn't seen since we moved in here, which was 12 years ago now, I think. So there's a lot of stuff that just got moved directly from the garage of the last house to the garage of this house and then never left again, including, all kinds of interesting tidbits, mostly from the kids' childhood, because, of course, my childhood is, although it has receded even farther into the haze of memory, I haven't added any childhood memorabilia to my collection. I still have all the things I have, but there hasn't been any new childhood. There's probably a second childhood coming somewhere up the line, but so far that hasn't arrived yet, as far as I know. But the kids, of course, during the 12 years we've been living here, added a ton of stuff. So there was all these things we found from them. But then, of course, anytime you start pulling out old boxes, you're finding old records and books and letters and, in my case, a zillion tons of business and book business related stuff, reviews in foreign languages and all kinds of stuff. So, and then just hauling things, just hauling and hauling and hauling. And which, if there's anything that will make you feel your age quickly, it's hauling boxes of your old stuff around. So that's what's going on here. And trying to think if there's anything else of interest whatsoever. No, as I said, not really. It's been that kind of a last few weeks that, without it going into the whole context of everything, it's nothing worth explaining about. So let me just check back in case there have been any more people on board since we started. And then at that point, I'm just going to start reading early, even though it is early. Let me see who else we've got since then. So, John Lutz, I'm assuming is how the last name is pronounced. But if I'm wrong, John, please feel free to tell me. Keith, yes, catharsis. Yeah, there is some catharsis. Now, there's more catharsis. Keith is messaging me about how it's cleaning out long abandoned spaces equals catharsis. The cleaning out part does. The throwing things away is indeed catharsis in the classic Greek sense. And that we had to do a lot of. And that included, I'm afraid, having to chuck out or not throw out, but recycle to libraries and Goodwill and stuff, a lot of books, because we just have thousands and thousands of them. And there are many of them that we'll probably never look at again. And there's only so much room to store everything. So there is some catharsis in finally moving out some of those, all those things where, and they're not so much my nonfiction stuff. There's just a ton of fiction that I either read once and will never read again, or were given to me at conventions or something, as part of convention bags. And I looked at the first page and said, I don't think this is my kind of thing. And, just thousands of books. So we've recycled in the sense of making them available to other people, as many as we could. Ruby, hello, Ruby, and Tiffany. And there's Mark. I missed you last night, Mark, but I saw you after I had got off the air. I saw that you had checked in. Good to see you. Tracy, hello, that's Tracy McClatchy. Rest and stretch when you can. Well, yeah, I'll be happy when I can stretch again without screaming. The other Barbara, another Barbara. Hello, Barbara, good to see you. And John says Lutz rhymes with boots. And so now I know. See, I picked it up right away. Anyway, so what else? No, I think that's about it for now. I think I'm just going to start reading. So what we were reading last night from The Dragons of Ordinary Farm, where did that go? Come back here. Sorry, I just lost the thing that I used to keep myself from accidentally ending the live broadcast early. I found that one out early on by the worst possible way, as some of you will have been present for, where I accidentally tried to bring up one window over another and wound up clicking on the end live broadcast feed. Anyway, so last week, or rather last night, in Secrets of Ordinary Farm, what happened? Let me see. I almost said Simon. God, I'm caught between book franchises here. Tyler and Lucinda is who I'm thinking about. Tyler was in the Dragon's Nest. He figured out that probably the continuous scope, Octavio Tinker's device for navigating the fault line, had been picked up by the dragon Alamu, because dragons like shiny things, and Alamu was present on the night that Gideon's laboratory burned down. So Tyler went out in search and found the nest, and as he found it, Colin, who had followed him, also found it. This is Colin Needle, the witch's son. And they were both in the nest arguing when Alamu, the dragon, returned. And so then there was a bunch of exciting stuff about that. Meantime, Lucinda was walking across the back of the house where the various gardens and open areas are, and noticed a procession of animals, mostly insects and worms and things like that, but also snakes and small mammals and even some birds, all heading toward the abandoned, ruined greenhouse. And when she got to the greenhouse, she was trying to lean in and have a look inside, where it was just full of greenery and things that had grown wild in there. And as she did, the pane fell out of the greenhouse window, and some kind of powdery something came floating out, and Lucinda fell down, choking and coughing and all of that, and passed out. And then the other thing that happened was that Tyler was saved in the dragon's nest by Ula, the cave girl, and she helped him out and then informed him that she had seen Colin running away with a shiny, round device that, from her description, seemed pretty clearly to be the continuoscope. So Colin had found the continuoscope and escaped with it, while Tyler was struggling to survive with the dragon. Needless to say, Tyler was very unhappy about that and was going to chase after Colin and beat him up. But then Ula told him why she'd come looking for him in the first place, which was that Lucinda was very sick. And that's where we stopped, and that's where we are starting again on Chapter 20. And Chapter 20 is called Taking Tea with Desta. Lucinda was in a cave that was also the farmhouse, sitting on one side of a table set in the middle of a room full of photographs. On the far side of the table, teapot held in a clawed foot, sat the young dragon Desta, smiling kindly. "It's really rather simple," Desta explained. "You've been eaten alive. It happens all the time. My mama tells me that sometimes it's easier just to swallow a deer or a cow whole than struggle with carrying it back to the nest. More tea?" Lucinda nodded, although she did not remember having had any tea in the first place. "It's made with roses," Desta said, pouring for them both and then picking up her own cup. By the way, if in case you don't remember, in case you just tuned in here, Desta, the real Desta is a dragon. This is not the real Desta, obviously. "It's made with roses," Desta said, pouring for them both and then picking up her own cup. "Very good for girls. Girls like roses. You like roses, don't you?" Lucinda couldn't remember whether she did or didn't, but she nodded anyway. "Oh, yes, of course. Lovely roses." But it was hard to talk. Her tongue felt huge, and her face was very hot. The walls and ceiling of the cave parlor were covered in a green paper with plant designs that actually seemed real, curling stems and dark spiky thorns that hung all around. Lucinda wondered if Desta might even have made the tea from those wallpaper plants. The back of her throat felt very prickly and thorny indeed. "When did you learn to talk so well?" she asked. Desta had another sip of her tea, her wing raised to her mouth, her smallest foreclaw protruding. "I've always been able to talk. You had to learn how to listen." But I thought dragons didn't like humans. Why are you being so nice to me?" "Because you're probably dying." She nodded somberly. "So if we don't have this conversation now, we probably never will. And I wanted to tell you that Azinza was right." Lucinda was confused and sad. She didn't want to die. "Azinza?" "About the monster. Something with a very long reach. Very, very long." "What do you mean? I don't understand." "Lucinda!" The dragon's voice grew cold and sharp. "Lucinda, you must sit up." "But I don't understand." "Sarah, make her sit." Lucinda couldn't understand where the cook had come from, or why she couldn't see her, but before she could ask about it, someone clutched her with strong hands and pulled her up out of her chair. As Lucinda fought against the invisible attack, her tea spilled on her face. "You stupid girl," the dragon's voice said. But it wasn't the dragon's voice any longer. "See what you've done. You've spilled it all. Now I will have to make more." Lucinda opened her eyes to find herself in the snake parlor, stretched out on one of the old couches. She could dimly make out the bulk of Gideon's bed, pale as a ghost ship on the other side of the room. Sarah, the cook, sat over her, mopping her forehead with a damp cloth. Lucinda sat up. Not just her forehead was wet. She was sweaty all over. "What?" "You must not struggle, Lucinda," Sarah told her, but her voice was kind. "You have your medicine spilled all around. She goes to make more." "What happened to me?" "It is not sure. Pema and Azinza brought you in from the garden. They say you fell down and that you were very sick. Mrs. Needle gives you medicine to make you better." Before Lucinda could ask any more questions, the slim figure of Mrs. Needle swept back into the room, a cup in one hand. She laid her thin, hard arm against Lucinda's chest to hold her firmly in place. "No more playing up now, child. Drink this." Lucinda didn't have the strength to fight. Besides, she thought, if she wanted to poison me, she could have done it already. Still, she smelled the dark liquid carefully before she drank it. It had a slightly musty taste, but it had been sweetened with honey. Lucinda managed to drink it without much trouble. When she was finished, Mrs. Needle leaned over her, looking carefully at Lucinda's face, her delicate nostrils flaring as she sniffed for odors. She pulled back Lucinda's blanket and began a painful examination of her belly. "Spleen?" Mrs. Needle muttered as her long, hard fingers dug in just below Lucinda's rib cage. "Kidneys." The Englishwoman seemed to be feeling as many different organs as she could. It was a dreadfully intimate sensation, but Lucinda was too weak to resist. When she had finished, Mrs. Needle wrote a few notes in a small book. "No harm to the organs," she said. What happened to me? Lucinda could only remember being in the garden, looking at the dead and dying animals. Beyond that, she had only images, the green house, the tangled roses, but it all seemed foggy and uncertain, as though it had happened to someone else. The housekeeper gave her a cold look. "Who can say, child? The garden is full of medicinal plants, dangerous things. You have been told that many times. Only a fool would go touching things she knows nothing about. You are lucky you are not dead." "I swear I didn't do anything wrong." But was that true? She wasn't entirely certain. I would never touch any plants I didn't know about. Really." Mrs. Needle was not going to be stopped or even slowed. "So well-behaved, are you? So reliable? Only days ago you insulted me in front of those Spanish people, child, those Carrillos, as much as suggested I was trying to murder Gideon. Last summer it was some madness about sending animals to spy on your brother. So you'll forgive me if I find your protests a bit suspect." Lucinda turned to appeal to Gideon, but he seemed barely aware of what was going on. The old man stared at Lucinda with his red-rimmed eyes as though he had never seen her before, mouth moving as though he was chewing, or talking in a voice no one could hear. Just looking at him made Lucinda feel queasy and strange. No, she realized, not just queasy. She was downright feverish. Her head was hot and seemed too large for her shoulders, and all her muscles ached. She swayed a little. She didn't want to argue anymore. In fact, she didn't want to have to be here with pale, witchy Mrs. Needle or Uncle Gideon another second. And as she thought these woozy thoughts, the parlor door suddenly thumped open. "Where's Lucinda? What happened?" It was Tyler, with Ula and Pema and Azinza right behind him in the doorway. Ula was actually trying to hold her brother back. "Luce," he said, "are you all right?" She did her best to smile, but her head was really pounding now. "I've been better. Something in the garden made me sick for a while. But she was still sick, she realized. Worse, if anything. Her headache more painful by the second, and something burning at the back of her throat and in her nose. "What is the meaning of this intrusion, Master Jenkins?" demanded Patience Needle. "This is Gideon's sick room, but you burst in here as though it were a barn, and you were some kind of caterwauling animal. And look at you, dirty and tattered. I suppose it's unimportant to you that someone else will have to repair those clothes?" Tyler knelt down beside Lucinda, looking her up and down. He felt her forehead. "Wow, you're really hot. You should be in bed instead of here, Luce." "Yes, that's exactly where she should be," said Mrs. Needle. "And you, boy, should also be somewhere else, so that your great-uncle can rest. Go on, all of you, out!" She waved her pale hands at Ulla and the kitchen women, but though they all retreated, they did not go far, stopping to watch wide-eyed from the entry hall. "No, send her out, Uncle Gideon," said Tyler. His voice sounded too loud to Lucinda, but everybody else sounded loud, too. Each word made her skull throb. "I need to talk to you about Mrs. Needle and her son." As she turned toward her great-uncle, Lucinda thought she might be dreaming again. Gideon was looking more and more like a dragon sitting on top of a horde. Not a young dragon, like Alamu, but an ancient dragon who had no allies, only enemies. He was looking at Tyler, but his mouth was pursed, like he'd eaten something horribly sour. He looked nothing like the Gideon she knew. He barely looked human to her. "It's the fever," she told herself, "making me see things. It must be the fever." You are a terrible, wicked boy," she heard Mrs. Needle say. "It's your son who is wicked," Tyler was almost shouting. "He tried to kill me, or at least he left me to die." Lucinda turned her heavy head away from Gideon and saw that Colin Needle was now standing in the parlor behind the kitchen women, his eyes wide and his face white with shock. What Tyler was saying must have upset him, although Lucinda couldn't make much sense of it. In fact, she could barely remember where she was. "What's wrong with me?" "As everyone here knows, Gideon is not well, and I am nursing him," said Mrs. Needle loudly. "Do you want me to go out, Gideon? You have only to tell me, and I will leave. Gideon, do you want me to leave?" She finally caught the old man's attention. He looked at her, vaguely, for a moment, then shook his head. "There, do you see? That's... Tyler could hardly find the words. "If you have nothing else to offer besides these horrid accusations, please leave this room and let your great-uncle rest," said Mrs. Needle. "We will discuss your astonishing behavior some other time." "No way! I could have been killed. I was in Alamu's nest, and the dragon came back. Colin left me there to die. Also, he could steal the continuoscope for himself." The women in the doorway gasped in shock. Lucinda couldn't see Colin anymore. Had he run away? Were the things her brother was saying true? The continuoscope, is it, which has been missing since before Colin was even born? Mrs. Needle looked as if she was ready to dive in front of Gideon to protect him from Tyler. "And what is your proof of this absurd accusation?" She looked up. "Where's Colin?" "Probably ran off to hide the evidence." Mrs. Needle was so pale and her face so angry that she looked more like a vengeful spirit than a witch. "In other words, you have... Excuse me. In other words, you have no proof of any of this." Gideon suddenly sat up in bed, his face twisting with annoyed confusion. What's going on here? What's going on?" The door swung wider as Ragnar stepped into the room, big as a tree and clearly unhappy about something, too. "Gideon," the Norseman said, his booming voice filling the small, darkening parlor, "once again, Hector Carrillo is at the front gate." "Send him away," said Mrs. Needle quickly.
Send him away,
Gideon echoed a moment later, but without much interest. Ragnar shook his head.
No, not again. This is a debt of honor, something you used to know about, Gideon Goldring, when you were a true Thane. Carrillo and his family need answers from you. They have been offered much money. If they sell to that man Stillman, our home here, your farm, Gideon, will be in great danger. You have repaid Hector Carrillo by ignoring him for weeks. No more.
What are you talking about, you impudent Dane? Mrs. Needle was so furious now that little spots of red had appeared on her cheeks. You have no right.
I mean that Hector Carrillo is waiting at the inner gate, Ragnar said calmly. I brought him through, and he is there now.
At the inner gate? Mrs. Needle's voice was close to a screech. Lucinda had never heard her so enraged. You brought him onto the farm property. Have you lost what little wit you had?
Perhaps, said Ragnar, but I value my honor. Gideon is well enough now to talk with him. Don't fear, the big man said, turning to the others. Carrillo has seen nothing but the house, no animals. But I will not send him away again.
Patience Needle turned to Gideon. Do you hear what this fool has done, Gideon? Brought strangers onto your property, given away your secrets. And these cursed children whom you so kindly invited have also slapped you again. The boy is completely out of control, and now even the girl has been meddling with things in the garden that are none of her business. That's a lie, cried Lucinda. She tried to get up, but she was dizzy, and her head felt like a blob of wet cement. She would have fallen if Azinza's strong hand hadn't caught her.
Enough of your nonsense, witch, Ragnar growled. Let Gideon speak for himself.
But Mrs. Needle was like an opera singer in the middle of her big scene. She was building up to her big conclusion. Gideon, do you understand? The boy has been meddling in the dragon's nest. God himself cannot say what will come of that. You know how dangerous Alamu can be when he is disturbed. You really must do something, Gideon. These children bring only trouble. And now a stranger is on your land even as we speak, looking, spying. Spying? You and your creepy son are trying to steal this whole farm, Tyler shouted at her.
A stranger?
Gideon peered out from beneath his bushy eyebrows as though he had only finally heard what was being said. His sallow face stretched in a grimace of distaste.
Here? On the farm?
Yes, said Mrs. Needle almost triumphantly. Strangers! Our secrets will be uncovered. We will lose the farm, and you will lose Grace once and for all.
She lies, Gideon, said Ragnar. Just come and talk to Carrillo. He is an honorable man. He only wishes to speak about Stillman and other things.
Gideon sat up straighter, struggling and quivering so that he looked like something being born out of the tangle of blankets.
You brought a stranger here? It is Hector Carrillo, your neighbor, Ragnar protested. We owe so much to him.
Banish them, hissed Mrs. Needle. Send them away. They are traitors, all of them. Ragnar, this boy, the girl, they are all trying to steal the farm from you.
Steal my farm?
Now Gideon was fighting to get out of bed, his face almost purple with rage as he waved his arms like a drowning man. But he seemed bleary, slow, as if he truly was underwater.
Out! All of you! Out! Out of my room! Off my farm! I trusted you, but you betrayed me.
He turned his mad, staring eyes on Tyler and Lucinda. "And you children," he said with what looked shockingly like actual hatred, "have done nothing but try to destroy what I'm doing here. Go away, all three of you traitors. Get out of my sight. And never come back to Ordinary Farm." Chapter 21. A Surprise Meeting. Automatic lights all over the farm were flickering on as the sunset dwindled, their orange glow only a shade lighter than the sky. Tyler stood in the front doorway, his heart beating so fast he felt dizzy, wondering if he would ever see this wonderful, shocking place again, as Ragnar appeared from the snake parlor, carrying Lucinda cradled in his arms like a small child. "How is she?" The big man shook his head. "I do not know. Not well. We will ask Hector Carrillo to help us." "Hear that, Luce?" Tyler asked. "The Carrillos will help. Everything will be okay." She opened her eyes and did her best to smile, but it was not the most convincing show of confidence Tyler had ever seen. Pema and Sarah thumped down the stairs, each dragging one of the children's suitcases. Both women were crying. "Everything is in them," Sarah told Tyler. "Pema swept under your beds and your closet." She suddenly began to sob again. "Where will you go?" Pema kept saying. "Where will you go?" "To the Carrillos, I think, if they will have us." Ragnar nodded, considering. "At least for one night. Lucinda must have rest and a comfortable bed." "What if they don't want us?" Tyler asked, worried by Lucinda's pale, listless features. "Mr. Carrillo was pretty mad at us the last time we saw him." "Not at you," Ragnar said grimly. "Mad at Gideon and the witch who gives him such bad counsel." He scowled. "Where is Simos? I wish I could speak with him before we go." He turned to Sarah. "Tell Walkwell what has happened. He will know what to do." "But what's going on?" Tyler felt as though the world had abruptly turned upside down. "Why is Gideon acting so strange?" "I know not," Ragnar said. "All is strange today. This is like the day that was my death day." He waved to Sarah and the other women, then to Caesar in the kitchen doorway before he led Tyler out of the front door. The sky was a curtain, dark as pencil lead. "Death day?" It took Tyler a moment to understand. "The day you almost died, but instead came here to our time? But Gideon saved you. You didn't die." "I was ready. I had sung my death song." They were silent as Ragnar led Tyler across the property to the nearest automatic gate. Mr. Carrillo was parked on the other side, his truck running, belching little puffs out of its tailpipe. He looked up as they approached. "Where's Mr. Goldring?" Ragnar stopped beside the truck. "Gideon is not coming. In fact, he has thrown me and the children off the farm." "What?" Hector Carrillo stared at Lucinda where she lay, limp and barely conscious in the big man's arms. "What's wrong with her?" "No one knows. Something in the garden made her sick, but she needs a safe place to rest." "My wife will know what to do," Mr. Carrillo said. "Get in. You too, son," he told Tyler. "I'll call her when we're off the property. I can never get a good signal here." A few moments later, they were bumping slowly across the open spaces beyond the farmhouse and inner buildings, the two men in the front, Tyler and his sister in the back seat. Lucinda was half asleep, leaning on Tyler's shoulder. "Did all of this happen because you let me onto the property?" Mr. Carrillo asked. "It is not the cause," said Ragnar, "but it is a part." They stopped at the gate that led out of the middle zone and into the outer part of the farm. Ragnar got out and walked to the control box, then punched numbers into it. Nothing happened. He frowned, then did it again. "Did they change the codes already?" Tyler asked. "That's pretty stupid. We won't even be able to get out." But even as he spoke, something long and low and as big as a tiger stepped out of the shadows only a few yards from Ragnar. When it turned its pale, hairless face toward them, Tyler saw the orange smolder of its eyes reflecting the truck's headlights. "Oh, jeez," he said. He was having trouble getting his breath. "Ragnar, on your left, it's one of those—" "Manticore," said the Norseman softly. "Hammer of Thor, that thing should not be out of its pen so early. Someone has made a mistake. Keep your voices calm and none of you move." Mr. Carrillo squinted through the windshield. "What in hell? What in hell?" "Quiet," said Ragnar. "Drive away, Hector. Drive back to the house." I don't know how to get back through the other gate," said Mr. Carrillo, "and I'm not leaving you here." The sound of his voice clearly excited the manticore. It sat up straight and swiveled its dead stare between Ragnar and the truck. "Does either of you have a knife?" the Norseman asked. "A knife?" Mr. Carrillo didn't quite understand. "Not in the truck. Here." Tyler pulled out his jackknife. His heart was pounding like a marching band, 1,000 terrified thoughts ping-ponging through his mind. He slowly rolled down the window and tossed it toward Ragnar. At the movement, the manticore let out a strange bark and jerked back a step. The knife bounced in the dirt and landed near Ragnar's feet. "A very small blade indeed." The Viking frowned as he slowly crouched and picked it up. "But that can't be helped." The manticore watched him intently, its tail rattling back and forth through dust and dead leaves like a hissing snake. It was all Tyler could do, not to shout for help. But who would hear them anyway? "Get back in the truck, Ragnar," Mr. Carrillo said. The bearded man only shook his head. "No, if I move, he'll come after me. He will strike soon in any case. Get the children away." He began moving in a wide, slow circle, trying to pull the manticore's attention away from the battered pickup. Lucinda stirred beside Tyler. "I'm sick," she moaned. "I want to go home." She didn't seem to have any idea of what was happening. An instant later, the manticore struck at Ragnar, reaching for him with a speed that utterly shocked Tyler. Ragnar was barely able to avoid the creature's clawed fingers. As he danced back, the front of his shirt flapped open, torn to tatters. "Drive! Curse you, Hector!" Ragnar shouted. "Get these children away from here!" But even as he spoke, the manticore leaped toward him, snarling in a curious, high-pitched way. Excuse me. Ragnar fell back, but the thing was faster than he was. And although he hacked at the creature with Tyler's knife, whatever blow he dealt it did not stop it or even slow it down. Man and monster went down in a struggling heap, arms and legs and lashing tail. A moment later, one of them rose. The snarling noise had been replaced by something else, something closer. Mr. Carrillo was desperately trying to restart the stalled truck, but the engine turned and turned without catching. The manticore, limping and snarling, began to circle Ragnar's motionless body, examining him before beginning to feed. An instant later, the pickup's truck engine fired. Blam! Tyler and Mr. Carrillo both shouted in terror as something smashed down on top of Mr. Carrillo's truck, a huge impact, as if a car had dropped out of the sky. The windshield spiderwebbed and sagged inward. Tyler felt as if he couldn't breathe. Another manticore? Alamu's crocodilian face appeared as its long, slender neck dipped down from the top of the car, just outside Lucinda's window. First the manticore, now this? was all Tyler had time to think before the dragon opened its jaws wide and let out a bellowing screech that made his skull rattle. Lucinda woke up, took one look out of her window, and started screaming. Mr. Carrillo was shouting words in Spanish that Tyler couldn't understand. The dragon leaped off the truck and landed on the ground with enough force to kick up packed earth. The security lights made Alamu's scales shine light flecks of gold, but he was not posing to be admired. He was coiling to strike. An instant later, he spread his wings and launched himself at the manticore. Alamu hit with the full force of his body. Then his wings bellied with air and pulled him up, knocking the surprised manticore away from Ragnar's motionless body. An instant later, Alamu dropped back down again. Even as the manticore reared up, the dragon seized the beast's head in his long claws and forced his enemy to the ground beneath his greater weight. The manticore thrashed but could not escape, the end of its spiny tail pounding the ground like a mace. "Why the hell are those things trying to eat us?" screamed Mr. Carrillo in English. "Where did they come from?" "Tell you later." Tyler was so frightened he thought he was going to pee himself. Mr. Carrillo got the truck into gear at last, and it leaped forward across the dirt. For a moment, Tyler thought they were going to crash through the fence, but then the truck spun, dirt flying, back to the spot where the two impossible beasts were locked in a screaming death struggle. When they reached Ragnar's motionless body, Mr. Carrillo stood on the brakes and they slid to a halt. Then he opened the door and leaped out. "Help me get him!" he called to Tyler. Every second out of the car felt like death was at Tyler's shoulder. He was fighting back tears of terror. Ragnar's body was terribly heavy, but at last he and Mr. Carrillo managed to heave the big man over the tailgate and into the bed of the truck. Ragnar groaned but did not open his eyes. "Go!" Tyler screamed to Mr. Carrillo as he jumped into the back seat next to his sister. Lucinda's eyes were open, and she looked as if she wasn't certain whether she was awake or having a nightmare. "Go! Go! Go!" The truck threw dust as the wheels churned. Then it skidded and slalomed around the two creatures' struggle, which seemed to have suddenly entered a new and less violent stage, the dragon bending over the smaller manticore almost tenderly, sniffing at it as it twitched on the ground. "I think the electric fence might be off," Mr. Carrillo shouted, "but don't touch the doors of the car, just in case. Don't touch anything." What? How could they avoid touching the seats they were sitting on? Tyler didn't have long to wonder. A couple of seconds later, the pickup truck hit the fence and smashed through, collapsing it into a tangle of wire mesh and broken poles. For a second, the truck threatened to get stuck, but then it jounced over the wreckage, and they were out into the open spaces beyond. "Head for the main outside gate," Tyler said as he looked back. Alamu was watching them, but to his relief showed no signs of following. The dragon stretched his head up on his long neck to observe them, then bent once more to the crumpled, motionless form of the manticore. Chapter 22. A thing of gears and stars. Oh, and I've gone out of focus again. Why? Why do you do this to me? You're supposed to be my camera. You're supposed to be on my side. Whatever. Chapter 22. A thing of gears and stars. Patience Needle watched from the front door as the Mongolian herdsman went past with wheelbarrows filled with manticore parts. The dead creature was too massive to move easily in one piece, but Mr. Walkwell had some kind of superstitious objection to burning it, so they were trundling the body off to bury it somewhere in the hills. "One of Gideon's most foolish, dangerous ideas, those animals," she told Colin. "I told him, but he wouldn't listen. 'They'll kill someone,' I said, and I was quite nearly right. It still may happen." She shook her head. "Such a pig-headed man." Colin Needle had stopped watching the cleanup. The blood made him feel dizzy and sick to his stomach, and of course more than a bit guilty because of his own involvement. This should have been his moment of triumph, now that the Jenkins children and the Viking bully had been thrown off the farm, but For some reason, Colin didn't feel as happy as he thought he should. "How is Gideon doing?" he asked, peering into the parlor. The old man was sleeping, or appeared to be, his mouth wide open and his eyes shut. "Any better?" Mrs. Needle's mouth tightened a little, but she did her best to smile, an effort Colin appreciated because he saw it so seldom. "I think so. I'll have him up and about soon." Colin felt his chest loosen. When she talked about Gideon, it was with real puzzlement and concern in her voice. That proved his illness couldn't be anything to do with her. He wanted to celebrate this happy state of affairs in some way, but both he and his mother were going to be very busy today. Already she had made several calls to Gideon's lawyer, Mr. Dankel. "I am not pleased, Mr. Dankel, not pleased at all," he heard her say at one point. Dankel was out of town, apparently, and whatever she wanted from him would have to wait. Some legal question that needed answering because of Gideon's illness, Colin guessed, or some insurance thing. He didn't really care too much. And why should he? His enemies had been driven from the field, and Colin Needle himself was now the boy with the best toy in the whole wide world. In fact, Colin knew he had been very lucky. When he heard Tyler Jenkins shouting about the dragon's nest and Gideon's precious continuoscope, he had been certain that things were going to get bad quickly. He had only used his computer to open the manticore cage to cause a distraction. How was he supposed to have known that Carrillo fellow from next door was waiting outside the inner gate right in the monster's way? It had been sheer dumb luck that only one manticore had got out, and even greater luck that Alamu had been close enough to notice the ruckus and judged the escaped manticore nasty enough to be a challenge. Colin knew that the creature's death was a terrible loss, one of only 6 in the world, but he also knew that Walkwell and the rest could dispose of a dead manticore. A dead Hector Carrillo would have been a lot more difficult to hide. In fact, it chilled him how close he had come to getting somebody killed. "But I'm fighting a war to save this farm," he reminded himself. "In wars, there are casualties. And the prize is worth it. Including, of course, the best prize of all, the ability to use the fault line and everything that would come with it. And that ability was now Colin Needle's." The continuoscope was still where he had left it in the library the evening before on his way back from the dragon's nest, stashed unceremoniously beneath one of the dusty chairs. Colin lifted the device up to the morning light that streamed through the high windows. It was a beautiful thing, even if you didn't know what it could do. A complicated but graceful arrangement of golden celestial rings, starry pale crystals, and shiny gears in many sizes, some big as salad plates, others smaller than the tip of Colin's finger. Everything in him longed to try it out, but he knew he wasn't ready. In the past year, he had managed to hunt down more of Octavio's journals, scattered in the oddest places in the house. It had taken much persistence, but as he had tracked down piece after piece, the search had also given him insights into Ordinary Farm's creator. Something had clearly made old Octavio more than a little paranoid about his discoveries, enough that he seemed to have intentionally hidden his writings. Either that, or he had been senile at the end and had just forgotten where he had left them. But even after close study of all the material he had so proudly managed to assemble, Colin had barely begun to understand the ideas in Octavio's work, let alone anything relating to how to use the complex instrument that was the continuoscope. Patience. It wasn't just his mother's name, it was Colin's word to live by. No point in getting himself lost in the fault line by being in a hurry. The Jenkins kids were gone now, after all. He could take his time. He began by cleaning every inch of the continuoscope gently and thoroughly with a soft cloth, Q-tips, and alcohol, and, for some of the very, very hard-to-reach places, a little canister of compressed air that he kept for cleaning keyboards and computer parts. Considering the time it had been in the dragon's nest, Octavio's device seemed to be in amazingly good condition. Under the dirt, it appeared largely undamaged. When he got hungry, Colin trotted back across the grounds to the kitchen and helped himself to some leftover dinner rolls, as well as some pickles and slices of ham from the refrigerator. He also grabbed a pitcher of cold milk, then carried it all back to the library so he could keep working. It was early afternoon by the time he finished cleaning. Colin touched the crystals in their tight baskets of coiled golden wire. They might have been a little warm to his touch, but that might also have been his imagination, because he was very excited. After so long, after so many nights hunting for journals and information, and after the mind-numbing fight to understand the things Octavio Tinker had written, and after he had risked his life too, searching the dragon's nest, all that work, and now here he was holding the actual article in his own trembling hands. The most powerful thing in the world, and it's all mine. Colin surprised himself. It was as if someone else had thought it, not him. But it was true, wasn't it? Governments around the world would pay millions, no, billions, for this thing, and even more for Ordinary Farm itself. Look at that crook, Ed Stillman. He had brought $500,000 just to buy what he thought was a live dinosaur egg. How much would he have been ready to pay if he had known it was from a real live dragon? And what would he give for the ability to travel to any time in history? No. Colin did his best to clamp the lid on such thoughts. Maybe later, when he had assumed real control of the farm, he could think about all the different possibilities. Now he had more important things to do. He would study and study and study. And when he was ready, he would take the continuoscope, and then he, Colin Caiaphas Needle, would make the fault line his own. And I think I have time. Yeah, I can start the next chapter. We'll see how far we get. Chapter 23, At Cresta Sol. Ragnar groaned and straightened up in the seat. Tyler was frightened by the blood on the Norseman's face and chest, but Ragnar felt himself carefully, then declared, "Nothing but swipes." He touched the back of his head. His hand came away bloody. "But that thing rattled my brains against the ground. What happened?" When Tyler told him, Ragnar grinned through the drying blood. It made him look frightening and fierce. "Then the worm saved my life, because the manticore would have had my guts. I had never thought to owe a dragon. But I do." He looked at Lucinda. "Your sister?" "I don't know. She's sick." Ragnar leaned over to touch Lucinda's forehead, nodded, and saw the mess he had made of the seat behind his head. "I apologize, Hector Carrillo," he said. "My blood is in your car." Mr. Carrillo didn't say anything, but Tyler could see the man's eyes were still wide with fright, and he was hunched over the wheel as he drove, as if the devil himself might be chasing them. Tyler didn't understand how sick his sister really was until they reached the Carrillo's farm. As Mr. Carrillo pulled up in front of the house, Lucinda, who had been leaning on Tyler's shoulder for most of the trip, began to slide off the seat. He clutched her arm and shook her, but she was out cold. Although cold was the wrong word to use, Tyler could feel the heat coming off her like a light bulb that had been burning for hours. "She's really hot," he said, struggling to keep her sitting upright, but Lucinda was as limp as a rag doll, a very heavy rag doll. "She's got a bad fever. The Carrillos will see that she has what she needs," said Ragnar, but he didn't sound very convinced. It was strange to see the huge Norseman at a loss for what to do, but it was all so frightening. Tyler was so busy trying to get Lucinda to wake up that he hadn't noticed Mr. Carrillo had got out of the car until he returned with his wife, Sylvia. Mrs. Carrillo looked almost as worried and frightened as Tyler felt, but she took control quickly. "Lift her out and carry her inside," she told Ragnar.
Hector, get me some water and some towels. As they brought Lucinda into the house, the Carrillo children came running to see what was going on. Is she all right? Carmen asked. What happened? Your father said she's got a fever. Go get a pair of your pajamas and a bathrobe, her mother said. She's going to need a change of clothing. Everything she's got on is soaking wet. When Carmen was gone and Ragnar had put Lucinda down on the couch, Mrs. Carrillo wrapped Lucinda's head in damp towels, then stuck a thermometer in her mouth. You couldn't warn me? She asked her husband. Phone never works over there. He frowned. Should we take her into Liberty? Mrs. Carrillo scrutinized the thermometer. 101. Not too bad. I'll sit with her. If it goes up any, we'll take her in. Lucinda's eyes fluttered open. She looked around, but it didn't seem as if she could focus. Tyler? Her voice was a cracked whisper. I'm here, Luce. You're going to be okay. We're at the Carrillo's house? Something. She closed her eyes, defeated for a moment, then tried again. Greenhouse. We know. You were out in the garden near the greenhouse when something made you sick. Do you know what it was? Greenhouse, she said, almost crying. The effort seemed to exhaust her. She closed her eyes and seemed to fall asleep again. Tyler held his sister's hot, damp hand. Seeing her like this frightened him, and for the first time in a long time, he wanted his mother. Man, he said to no one particular, what happened over there? It got worse before it got better. Lucinda had to be carried off to Carmen's room twice during the evening to have her sweat-soaked clothes changed. She moaned and thrashed for much of the evening, sometimes talking to a Tyler who wasn't there, instead of the Tyler who was sitting next to the couch watching worriedly. Other times she seemed to be speaking to the dragons. Once she even asked Desta to pass the tea, and a few times she seemed to be talking to something else entirely, something that frightened her badly. No, she kept saying, no, don't want to go. During those moments, it was all Tyler could do to hold on to her slippery hand. At last, Lucinda's skin began to cool, and her sleep became less disturbed. She also stopped talking. Mrs. Carrillo examined the thermometer. Just under 100. I think she'll be okay. You kids off to bed. Stephen, get Tyler a sleeping bag and an air mattress out of the garage. And don't forget to shake out the spiders. Tyler laughed. I'm so tired I could sleep in a whole nest of spiders. Grandma Paz, who had been helping Sylvia Carrillo nurse his sister, crossed herself hurriedly. Don't say such a thing. You would bring the susto on yourself. A susto's kind of like a curse or something, Steve whispered. It comes from being scared. As it is, I will have to sweep your sister, said Paz. You too, maybe. What does that mean? Tyler whispered to Steve. I don't want to be swept. Don't worry about it, Steve told him quietly. You just lie down and she waves a broom over you. But don't let her near anything bleeding. I fell off the monkey bars at school once, and my leg was all bloody, and she wanted to put powdered rattlesnake in the cuts. I think I'm going to stop on that line, since it's just about 8 o'clock. So I'm going to wrap it here and make sure that I get a chance to say hello to everybody who dropped in. I don't know who did drop in that I haven't said hello to yet. Various and sundry. Nance showed up. Hi, Nance. And Joy. Christy, hello. Chris Vandal, good to see you. Felina, hello. Congratulations. Applied to the University of Edinburgh Masters in Creative Writing. Excellent. Good for you. Angie, hello. If I hadn't said hello to you already. And Kelly, hello, Kelly. Nice to see you too. And I think I got everybody else. Yes.
So with that, I am going to wrap it up. It's now 8 o'clock. I thank you for joining me. As far as I know, I will be back same time next week. If there are any issues, I will tell you. If any of our domestic chaos intrudes, I will post it on my Facebook page. I have those of you who might have previously checked for things on Twitter must know that Twitter will no longer allow us to directly link to another service like Facebook where I do the live broadcast. So I've stopped putting a link on there, but I'm always available on Facebook, and you can still have a regular communication with me on Twitter. I just can't link to these broadcasts. Anyway, with that, I say thank you once more for joining me. Excuse me, all those guttural voices have done for me. I hope you all will take good care of yourselves because you are important. And I will strive to do the same for all of us here. Take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, take care of your friends and neighbors. I will see you very soon. And until that point, peace and be well. See you soon.